Hello Year 3 and welcome back to our next science lesson on YouTube. As always, I'm going to share my screen so we can get started together. There we go. Now today we've got a very exciting lesson. We are going to be testing nappies for their absorbency. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. To start with though, let's go through our recap questions. These questions focus on the learning we've already done in school this year. So first one, how do mirrors work? We know that mirrors reflect light, but why? Why do they reflect light? How do they reflect light? 2, igneous, metamorphic, or sedimentary rock is created when magma cools. Also, which one of those is created when magma cools? And lastly, what is in a nappy? If you took a nappy apart, a bit like Mr. English showed us earlier in the unit, what different materials would be used? As always, pause the video here, have a think about those questions, and restart the video when you are ready to hear the answers. Let's look at some of those answers together. Mirrors work simply because they are smooth, shiny surfaces, and smooth, shiny surfaces reflect light. That's why mirrors use a combination usually of glass and metal, because both of those materials are smooth and shiny. Next one, it was igneous rock, which is created when magma cools. And lastly, what is in a nappy? Some of the things you might find in a nappy are cotton, elastic around the waistbands, and absorbent crystals to absorb any urine or feces. You might have had a few extras, but I think they would be the main ones. Now, as we know, each lesson we focus on one of these scientific skills, and we need to develop all of these scientific skills to become a scientist. So today we're going to be focusing on setting up fair tests. And we're going to talk a little bit about what a fair test is. Just to start with though, as a little starter, and because everything we're doing at the moment focuses on different materials, I've got an activity for us to look at together. So let me reshare my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see that activity. There we go. I have a picture here, and I want you to think about what that picture is. What can you see here? What do you think it's showing? Have a look. I'm going to zoom out once in a moment, but maybe have a guess now. What do you think you can see? There, I've zoomed out one more. That's given you a bit more of a clue, a bit more information around the outside. Any ideas what this is now? Haven't you? Have a guess if you can. I've zoomed out one more. This is a slightly different angle as well. You can see it from the top. I'm not sure that's helped too much. We haven't got too much extra information. But whilst we're here, maybe let's have a think about what do you think this is made of? At the background, I think I can see something that looks a bit like it's made out of wood. And these bristly sections looks like they could either be made out of plastic or some sort of similar material. Let's zoom out again. And some of you will be able to guess what this is now. If I zoom out one more time, this is some sort of brush. And to me, it looks like a brush that you might use to clean your shoes or something similar, either to rub off the dirt or to apply polish. Well done if you got that. It was quite a tricky one to guess. Back to our lesson, and we are going to, as I said, we're going to be today testing nappies to see which is the most absorbent. Now, before we start looking at that together, we need to make this a fair test. So my question to you is, what is a fair test? If I will have 2 nappies, and I have 2 nappies here, and I want to see which one is most absorbent, how am I going to make that a fair test? Have a think. Let's have a look together. So when we are testing something, you need to make sure it is a fair test. To do this, everything should be the same except the thing you are testing. So going back to my example, I have 2 nappies. I want to see which one is most absorbent. So the only thing I'm changing is the nappies. This one is a different nappy to this one. The nappies are different. Everything else should be the same. So I should pour in the same amount of water. I should pour water of the same temperature. I should do it in the same room. I should do it at the same time. Everything else should be the same as much as possible. Let's look at an example, and you can tell me whether you think this would be a fair test. So again, I've got 2 nappies, picture on the screen this time. Is it a fair test if I pour 50 millilitres of water on this nappy and 100 millilitres of water in this nappy and say that this one's more absorbent because I poured more water in it? No, it wouldn't be. I haven't tested it using the same thing. I've only poured 50 millilitres here. If I poured more, it might be greater. So we've got to do the same thing to both of our nappies, and that's going to make it a fair test. So as I've said, this would not be a fair test. We've changed the nappy so everything else should stay the same, including the amount of water that I use. So what you're going to do at home, or if you're in school, you can do this in school, you're going to test different types of nappy and see which one absorbs the most liquid. Now, I've put nappy in brackets here because I realise for some of you, you won't have different types of nappies lying around at home. So you might have to be a bit creative. Instead of nappies, perhaps it's going to be, oh, I'm going to use 2 different tea towels, or I'm going to use 2 different napkins, or I'm going to use 2 different types of toilet paper, something similar that could absorb water. And you can that way still do this test at home, still test which one absorbs the most liquids. Now, regardless of what you're using, whether you're using nappies, tea towels, napkins, it's a good idea to ask a parent's permission before you go around the house taking different things. So please do that before you take anything from around the house and start pouring liquid over it. There are some questions to think about before you get started as well. How will you know when to stop pouring liquid onto nappy? Let's say I've got my 2 nappies and I pour 10 millilitres of water onto both of them, right? And it gets absorbed. So I pour another 10 millilitres of water onto it. It gets absorbed again. I keep going 10 millilitres. How do I know when to stop? Is it going to be when it seeps out of the nappy, or when I can see a pool of water on top of the nappy? I think I'm going to go for that one, when I can see a pool of water on top that's no longer being absorbed. You've also got to think about how you measure the liquids. I have a measuring jug that I'm going to use. Do you have something similar? If you don't, maybe use something you might have at home, just a glass or a mug. And as long as you fill it up to the same point each time, that way it's going to be a fair test. And you can measure it in cups instead of millilitres if you're using a cup. And how will you make sure that you do not spill the water everywhere? Again, I don't think your parents and carers will be too happy if water is going all over the floor. So how are you going to make sure you don't get water everywhere? Are you going to do it in the sink? Are you going to do it outside? Are you going to do it in a tray that captures any water that might be spilled? So have a think about how you can do it safely too. And lastly, how will you record the results? How are you going to show which one records the most? So I'm going to quickly stop sharing my screen so I can show you how I might do this. So I'm just going to show you on one nappy, and you can see there's a nappy there. Now, each time I'm going to pour in a certain amount of water. I have 100 millilitres here. That might be a bit too much, but I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to pour that into the nappy. I'm going to see if it gets absorbed, and I can see pouring it in. If I raise it a little bit higher, nothing's dripping through. Actually, it's all getting absorbed at the moment. And I can pour that all in. There's 100 millilitres of water on that nappy. That has been absorbed. I would repeat that with the next nappy. So I'd get another one. I would pour in 100 millilitres of water into that one and see if that gets absorbed. If they both absorb all of that water, I'd repeat that process again and do the same amount of water, pour it in. Does it all get absorbed? And keep going until I found which one can absorb the most water. Remember, you're going to have to think about when you stop. Are you going to stop when the water is spilling out the sides, or are you going to stop when you can just see some of that water floating on top? That's the part of the challenge for you today. Now, once you have finished and you've worked out how much each nappy absorbs, you simply need to record your results. So my one, as an example, I've said nappy A absorbed 55 millilitres, nappy B absorbed 60 millilitres. Obviously, it's slightly different to the one I just showed you. I've made up those results just as an example to show you how you could record it. If you weren't measuring in millilitres and you're measuring in cups, it could be nappy A absorbed 5 cups of liquids, nappy B absorbed 7 cups of liquids. So you can use different units of measure if you don't have a measuring jug available to you at home. Now, there's not going to be a set challenge for today because your challenge is doing that investigation. So you could either take a picture of what you're doing you could either send in your results and tell me how much each nappy or each tea towel or each paper towel absorbed, and you can show me that way. I look forward to seeing some of your attempts at this, but please remember, please be safe, please ask for your parents' permission, and be careful with how you do this investigation. Thanks for joining today, Year 3, and I look forward to seeing some of your wonderful science learning soon. Thanks, see you next time.